Welcome to this edition of This Is DesignIntelligence, conversations with leadership voices in the built environment. This edition is sponsored by the Tricord Group, leading successful relationship constructs for over 25 years, and Vim, helping the architecture and design disciplines design, deliver, and operate better buildings for a better world.
Greetings, this is Dave Gilmore, and this is Design Intelligence. Today, in the studios, I'm joined by Joel Pennington, the head of product for Vim. Joel brings to us an extraordinary background in filmmaking, electronic arts, the world of mixed reality. We're excited to have Joel with us today, and thanks for being here.
Well, thanks for having me. Really pleased to be able to chat with you.
Well, it's a fantastic journey that Vim has been on over this period of time. I know the company is called Vim. It's often identified as VIM, V as in Victor, IMAEC.com. I think that's your website address. So I want to make sure and we get that out right at the beginning because I want people to be able to go and take a look at this while they're listening to this podcast. So you've been on a journey. I wanted you to tell us a bit about that journey, the tremendous challenges of the work that you folks do, that you've encountered along the way. Some of those are technical challenges. Some of them are communication challenges. Sometimes it's just collaboration challenges. Talk to us about some of those and the breakthroughs that Vim has made in this journey.
Sure, happy to. So when we started Vim, we wanted to address a hard problem in the architecture, engineering, and construction space. And the hard problem that we think exists, or one of them, is that the richness of building information modeling does not extend down to the folks who actually build buildings, the actual constructors, the trade contractors themselves. That BIM data would be very well received if they had access to it. In our research and in our years of development, what we learned and then what we solved was, when you get to a level of detail as close to 500 as you can for BIM, which is something that we know we're going to need in the digital twin IoT operations and maintenance era, this is really big, complex stuff. And trade contractors can't be expected to go out and buy the world's most expensive, fancy computers to be able to access all this data, but they really do benefit from BIM data that's this rich to across their entire workflow, whether they're needing to increase their bid participation, make their estimates more accurate, get to layout, installation, assembly faster, and to a higher degree of quality. In our journey, what we learned was there was nothing on the market that could really address that problem. So we built our own. And we built three things. We built a file format that is actually has an open specification, which means anybody could go and look at it and leverage it themselves. And we want that to be ubiquitous within the industry and freely shared. We also built a way to uniquely take parametric BIM data and make it work exceptionally well for real-time use. And then the third thing we did was we built best-in-class applications for devices that people already own. And the first is out there today, and that is a extremely capable desktop application for the computers that you already own, which can run the world's most complex Revit projects as VIMs in seconds at extremely high frame rates when you would otherwise need a very, very expensive machine with a lot of specialized training. So that's a little bit about what our journey's been, and we think that with our new offerings out there on the market, that there's going to be quite a bit of interest in across the spectrum from design through down to trade contracting.
It's extraordinary that as sophisticated as we've gotten in design and with design tools, that there are so many, by the thousands of trade contractors just here in the United States alone that translate 3D down into 2D to be able to do the work that they do. And it's an extraordinary thing, isn't it? And we're trying to figure out how to close that gap. And I think that Vim certainly makes a tremendous leap of not only providing a tool set, but really a platform from which things can occur much more quickly and allows a tool set and an availability. If you can get to the net, you can get to Vim, you can get to the models. Am I correct when I say this?
Yeah, and what we've learned, I think there's two key things we've learned with our Lighthouse partners. So with companies like Skanska and HKS, we've learned that there are folks that are using Vim to go between 250 and 100 times faster in their workflows. But they didn't have to change the way they worked. They just now work 100 to 250 times faster. And that saves them $3,000 to $6,000 every time they use our software. The other key learning is with our partner, Foster & Partners, is as they design buildings with a very high degree of complexity, a lot of generative design, a lot of LOD 400 and above, they know that they're unable to either see complete buildings or even share them with the owners that demand that level of development until they've used our software. And now they can finally get the owners to understand and see what it is they're paying for.
Mm-hmm. We talk about LOD. What about upgrading our industry from, say, LOD 300 to the leap up to 500? What does that take? Talk to us about the benefits. What's the effort?
So we have to make the leap as an industry because buildings are more complicated than they used to be. They're bigger than they used to be. We have more of them. We are going to have fewer people to construct and operate those buildings, as the majority of the folks that would be doing that today are probably retiring in the next 10 years. So having a LOD 500 design, which is updated and used throughout the construction cycle to be then leveraged as a digital twin for operations and maintenance, is going to be a key selling point that any owner will be looking for from their architect and their general contractor. And so we believe that just for our industry to be able to serve the future needs, we have to make the leap up to LOD 500, and we need tools capable of providing access to that quickly, easily, without a lot of cost. Yeah. It needs to be used by everybody.
The importance of being able to operate in a real-time context is becoming more and more critical as the speed of construction is required and the less workarounds is so important. Talk to us about why real-time now? Could we have done it a few years ago? If not, maybe this is the leap. Maybe we could have done it, but we didn't. Why now?
I think what we were stuck in, and without companies like Vim and making the investment that we are in the progress that we're undertaking, real time always remained the marketing team's effort to win a pursuit, and maybe like one or two times you get a nice, very well put together design review session with the owner. But real time is really just make the BIM data accessible to all the folks who need it in the right place at the right time. And so if I'm an inspector and I want to look at, a piece of steel and make sure that the bolts are torqued to the right amount, I should be able to pull up a real-time model of that and look at the torque values. If I'm a operations and maintenance professional, I should be able to walk around the building and get the whole building so that if things change in the last minute, I can go up to the 10th floor, even though I didn't plan to go there that day. If I'm an architect in the practice, doing a review with stakeholders and possibly the owners, and the owners say, you know what, I don't want to see the canned demo. Take me over here. I'm interested in looking at this. Then that person should have the freedom and the flexibility to go wherever. And so when I talk about real time, what I'm really saying is the world we live in is real time. The things we interact with are all real, but we've been shackled to this concept of when you're with design data that's heavy and technical and dry, it can't be real time. Or if it is, then it's been simplified so much that it loses its essence, it loses its importance. And so we're trying to make sure that we can offer that real time like you have in the real world, but with all the data that makes BIM so special.
So how does that actually work? How does Vim make BIM? I feel like I'm rhyming. How does Vim make BIM accessible? What's the magic here? What have you guys done?
Well, we have a very smart way of taking data out of parametric design from Revit, from IFC, even other CAD modelers, where they have a mathematical representation of an object. And we understand that math quite well. But we also, because a whole bunch of us came from the video game world, really understand how real-time engines expect data to be structured for them. And so we've really been able to make the translation. We're kind of like a Babel fish. We can go from parametric design data to the real-time data needed for use in a game engine or on real-time devices. And the result is not a loss in quality, even though things like the file size might be smaller, the frame rate might be much, much higher, and you can, with a low cognitive load, pull this project up on any device and spin around even though you never opened Revit once in your life.
Well, that's fantastic. The translation on over is, I think, what makes this so powerful. But, these models are huge. They're fat. They're giant data, right?
Sure.
And things that are that fat are slow. And so if I'm using a small device, I'm out on a job site, how does that work? It seems counterintuitive to be able to move such large chunks of data and be able to view them and operate them without a Max Headroom effect, kind of thing, right? How does Vim address that?
Right. I can give an example of a project that we're working on. It's an LOD 400 with some LOD 500 elements in it. It's a 70-story tower. It is comprised of 450 links in Revit. It cannot be opened in Revit. It's simply too big. Its disk size is 42 gigabytes of parametric data. And we can take that project, and that project will open on my 5-year-old laptop with a 5-year-old GPU on it in about a minute. And I get the kind of frame rate that I would expect to get if I'm wearing VR goggles.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And so, we can probably see this by going out to your site someplace. I'm sure you have a demonstration of this.
Yes. Yeah. Come by. This project is not on the website. It's confidential. However, I do have some stadiums. I've got a couple stadiums that I pop up, and a stadium that would take 15 minutes to bring up in Revit on my computer loads in 3 seconds using Vim on my computer.
Yeah, extraordinary performance. Yeah,
it's extremely performant, I guess is the way to describe it.
The best way to put it, yeah. We talk about data, and at Design Intelligence, we are apt to say that we believe that data essentially is nothing, that knowledge that we gain from data is something, but we fundamentally believe that understanding is the brass ring. Understanding is everything. It's one thing to see a bunch of data. It's another thing to accumulate that data into packets of knowledge, and knowledge is interesting, but it's not always particularly light bulb actionable, that it turns on the light bulb and we go, I get it. It seems that Vim moves us from data to knowledge, and then it gets us to the trigger of understanding, which we call insight. We think it does that because it moves at such a speed and at such a perspective. It provides insight into things that would otherwise be hidden, that we might not see because maybe it's our impatience waiting for something to load, maybe it's some other technical issue. But at the end of the day, it seems like it is on a path toward moving us from being a simple tool to being a true instrument toward enlightenment or understanding without trying to be too esoteric. Any thoughts on that?
I couldn't have put it better myself. And I would just add that some of our customers, while they love the three-dimensional aspect of it, they even get more excited about, insights into the underlying data that they can traverse. So we have a customer who uses our software as a grocery store chain owner to actually look at trends across all of their grocery stores. And instead of manually going through Excel to pick out pieces, they can traverse 100, 200, 500 stores at the same time and get instant feedback on trends about the buildings regarding all of the objects, the characteristics within the structures, how many shelves they have. They get all of that insight, all of that information instantly.
Wow. An interesting use of the tool too as well.
Yeah, they're making that leap. They see the investment to make the leap from 2D CAD to BIM, but then BIM with this ability to have insight and access, and they see it as critical for their business so that they can build and renovate much faster and to a lower cost, but also then to operate their buildings more efficiently.
Extraordinary. Another thing that we see, and I've had the opportunity to look at the VIM journey for a couple of years now and regularly get visits from my dear friend Errol Wolford, who will give me a demo and show me and tell me what's happening in different pieces. And it seems to me that across industry, this idea of convergence is occurring on multiple dimensions. And I talk about that as not convergence as in crashing together, but as an interwoven convergence. And I'm talking about the convergence of perspectives and possibilities of evidence-based truths and new definitions of value. And as I've watched the journey of VIM seems to me to be an enabler of value identification as well as value extraction through the insights that it's bringing to the market. It gets me pretty excited because I think about tools so that just line the shelves out there, the proverbial shelves, and they're interesting, but they're not insightful. And beyond just being insightful, do they extend past insight to really helping me understand where the value of the design is, or the extended value of the design into occupancy or occupant comfort or building performance or building product manufacturer performance, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Some thoughts about that, Joel?
One interesting convergence, it's a challenge I'm going to put out there into the community at large, is for building product manufacturers. As our industry, whether we like it or not, makes a major investment in off-site construction and modular construction, pre-built componentry, et cetera, we will start to adopt manufacturing workflows. Manufacturing has done a good job of improving their efficiency by 1,000% in the last 40 years. We haven't done a great job because we've gone up 8% in the last 40 years. What I witness with today's situation is as we try to adopt a more manufacturing-centric approach to building, design, and construction, we are unable to fully capitalize because we don't consume or use the real manufacturer's designs and objects and models. What we get in our BIM is usually a facsimile at best. And at VIM, we think we can address that as well. We think we can handle the raw, pure, unfiltered manufacturer's content project model data so that should designers want to truly integrate with manufacturing processes for the future of construction, which is, whether we like it or not, is going to include off-site manufacturing for building parts, they should be able to do it on their own terms. And they should be able to have a seat at the table and direct that and not have to go through some fairly poor layers of abstraction to try and get their design across. Mm-hmm. So it's a challenge. We're up for taking it. We think Vim is a file format and has a real-time technology stack around it that can address this and handle it very well. And we think it plays in with our level of detail or level of development 500 initiative.
I think so, and it certainly does, particularly as you move to the manufacturing end. It's interesting because you hint to it in your comments, the bias of the design community towards, we'll call it manufactured, pre-assembled type of process toward in the construction environment. I don't understand that bias. Are we so fragile in our identity that such a thing would somehow displace the value of crafted design? It's a funny thing to me to see that almost vehement reaction to things as if manufacturing were somehow a bad thing. I think that we're forced by economics. We certainly are now forced in a new context through COVID-19 and the after effects of this pandemic to understand new ways and means towards the built environment. And you folks are right in there to provide a level of assistance and support through these tool sets, these file types, this platform that you've created, which makes it pretty exciting. And again, it's not about the diminishment of design. It's actually about allowing design to be more fully informed, which gets me pretty excited, particularly as you leap to LOD 500 in this. It is finally the realization of life cycle management, isn't it, when we get to that level and can live in the life cycle of the building far beyond its commissioning into years from now. I'd be curious, how do we see the ongoing maintenance of models once they've been turned over to a building operator for the future? How are we seeing that work? Because Joe in the basement may not have any idea on how to operate with LOD level 500. He can certainly read it, but what if a piece or part is switched out? Who does the work of updating the models?
Well, I think when Joe has access to a good digital twin and the equipment matches, and Joe may not be certified on a certain piece of equipment. With today's augmented reality devices and the ones that are coming very soon in the future, Joe can basically phone a friend. He can call into the Schneider Electric or Siemens or General Electric tech support and get on a live augmented reality phone call with the certified technician to walk him through the steps to maybe de-energize the panel safely and go through the operations or maintenance procedures. And that's interesting because that really speaks to the fact that our buildings are bigger, there's more of them, and they're getting more complicated, and we'll have fewer people to operate and maintain them. So Joe, who maybe 20 or 30 years ago was actually 3 people dedicated to one building, just Joe as himself, he might have to support 3 buildings in his area. And so he will need to have his capability augmented with professionals and support connected to him digitally just so he can get the job done with these complicated facilities.
Extraordinary. So there was a time in your life when you wanted to be an architect, and you look back, is there a particular building that you remember that someplace back in your subconscious, or maybe it's on the front of mind, that you recall that inspired you, that said, gee, Dad, Mom, I want to be an architect? Is there something like that in your past?
Yeah. So the Pompidou was one that really sparked my interest. I think maybe I'm a closet HVAC nerd, but as a kid, looking at pictures of that in my architecture books, I was like, wow, that's really neat. And then there was a building that's quite a bit older, which is in Scotland, and I think it's an art school that, I don't know why I like it so much. It's got small windows, it's very heavy, but I just really, really got inspired by that and started drawing buildings like crazy at a young age.
It's extraordinary, isn't it? The things that impress us these ways.
Yeah.
Joel, it's been a delight being with you, and thank you for coming into the studio to talk to us about what's happening with Vim and the future of its use within the design community. We're pretty excited about this. Thanks again for being with us.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
Thank you for joining us for this week's edition of This Is Design Intelligence, sponsored by the Tricord Group and Vim. The producer for This Is Design Intelligence is Laura Spells. Sound engineering by Jared Knable. This has been a DI Media Group production.